90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we're going to discuss negotiation skills for lawyers and clients, and our guest is Dr. John Scottosante, and he is the author of a book on mortal adhesions about how to let go of some of your challenges and problems and negotiate for what you need in life. John, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Why are negotiation skills so important for lawyers and clients?
Well, they are, because everything in life, in a sense, is a negotiation. And, we want to get the best deal that we can out of every situation. On the other hand, we don't want to ruin relationships. And so knowing how to negotiate in a fair way in which you get much of what you want, but you give a little bit away so that you come out of that negotiation with a good relationship, feeling good about yourself. And even though my career was in surgery, I built a business up where I had 52 employees. And I had to negotiate salaries and contracts and so many different things over the years. And it's a real skill that I've worked on and many other people work on. And we all need to know, because we negotiate not only in business and in the legal arena, but we negotiate at home.
And if you don't make your needs, your concerns, your goals, if you don't express them, later on you may be unhappy about that, or you may kick yourself because you could have gotten a slightly better deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, you do. I mean, there's certain things you have to do. I mean, I'll just go down a list.
Sure.
One of the things, you have to do your research, right? You want a good deal, but you don't want something that's totally unrealistic. Supposing you're negotiating a salary, and you got to know what's out there, and you've got to have control of your emotions. You just can't go into a negotiation and immediately get upset when someone doesn't agree with what you want. And sometimes you have to be creative. You have to paint pictures for people. Like when I sold a lakefront house in Southern California, in which we had a 5-year drought and the lake receded. You have to paint a picture of what it'll look like and what it did look like when the lake came back. And you have to see other person's point of view. What if they give you what they want? What are their risks? And what are the complications that will come to them that will cause problems? So you have to listen to the other person, and you have to listen very closely. It's a good idea sometimes to listen to what they say and then throw it back to them, like, is this what you mean? So that they know you're listening, you get all the points clarified.
Lawyers have to listen carefully for what's important to their clients, what's important on the other side for people they're negotiating with, and perhaps, give some things that are lesser important to you and more important to them, while preserving most of what's very important to you or your clients.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to go into the negotiation and knowing what your bottom line is. What do you need to walk away with? So you may ask for a lot more, but you already know in advance, what that is. And sometimes you have to walk away. And
you have to research it too. You have to look at similar cases or similar real estate values or what similar businesses have sold for.
Yeah, and interesting, because I was selling an Ocean View house in California, and I decided to bring in the best real estate agent, by best meaning that they had the best reputation. And I said, well, what do you think this house is worth? And they gave me a figure, but I had already predetermined that what I wanted was 20% more than what they told me I could get. And I held my ground. And I said, well, thank you very much for your time and for coming over. I'll think about it and I'll let you know. And then I went to another real estate agency in which I knew the owner. I knew they were very reputable. And I told them my story. I said, I think I have one of the best views around. And when you're dealing with custom homes and you're dealing with views, nobody knows what the real value is. And so ultimately, I got my 20% more within a few months, and it worked out really well. So I walked away from the deal.
And sometimes people don't know what the true value of a case is or the true value of a resolution is. And sometimes things may fluctuate. There may be different trends. And even with real estate, there may be other factors that affect the value of that real estate. And interest rates or changing conditions or vacancy rates or a storm or being in a problematic area. So you just got to know all the factors that can adversely affect you that now or in the future.
No, that's so true. There was one case that I got brought into as an expert consultant. It was a malpractice case against a dentist who had not told his patient that the patient had periodontal disease and the patient had to lose a critical tooth that had them lose a bridge which was attached to the tooth. So the patient sued the dentist saying that they did not diagnose or tell them they had gum disease, which caused bone loss. Well, during it did go to trial. And actually, the defense was able to bring in an expert witness on root canal therapy. And they brought up the situation in which, how can you be sure that it wasn't a root canal problem that caused the loss? And it turned out that the jury was confused and the dentist was let off the hook in a sense. And so you have to be creative. You have to look at both sides of the story. You have to know a lot about your subject.
And as you mentioned in your earlier examples, you always have to be able to explain it clearly to a judge, a jury, an arbitrator, to the other side, in ways they can understand it and back up your points.
Yeah, I was the treating specialist that the patient was sent to, and I took good notes. And I said in my notes that when I went in there, I found what's called calculus, or you may call it tartar, up by the tips of the roots. Well, the defense attorney, the attorney who was litigating the case took photographs of my handwritten notes and blew them up. And but he basically told a story that totally confused the jury. It was truth, but anyway, like I say, the dentist was able to get off the hook and would not suffer the consequences. But go ahead, Ken. You're the legal man.
Okay.
What else
So
would
what
you
are
like?
what are the things that you think are important in trying to have better relationships with attorneys and clients, so they will get you the best possible results in the end?
Yeah, whenever I talk about relationships, I like to think about what I call a line graph. And picture a straight line, a horizontal line. And on the left side of the line, we can call, for simplification, we can call it the love side of the line, where everything is warm and fuzzy. We like the person. The opposite end of the spectrum is you might say hate, but it's not really hate. It's more fear. There's some fear going on in that person. What are they fearful of? I use it in my profession quite nicely. Let me give you a little example. I sometimes would come in the office at 8 o'clock and there'd be something on my desk that I would have to look at and take care of. But there was a patient waiting in one of the rooms that expected me to be in there at, say, 8 o'clock. So my assistant came in one day and she said, Dr. Scottosante, there's a patient, Mr. Smith, in room 1. He's ready to leave. He's angry. He's out of the chair. He's looking at his watch. And I'm thinking, well, I'm booked up for 2 months. I don't need an angry patient. And I used to say, let them go. When I learned this love fear situation, my mindset changed and I began thinking, I wonder what this person's fearful of. Are they fearful that they're going to suffer pain? Is it going to be too expensive? Are they going to miss too much time off from work? So that I went down to room one, and instead of, dismissing the patient, which I would have done before, I said in my mind, I wonder what they're fearful of. And I'd walk into the room and say, apologize that I was late because I was late. And then I would say, I know that you can bleed right now if you want to, but you're here. So let me take a look at your x-rays. And I want to tell you right now, there's no charge for today because I'd like to have you come back. Is it okay if I do that? And they'd almost automatically say, well, yeah, I'm getting it for free. Let them look at my x-rays. That's what they're thinking. So I look at the x-rays and I say, well, there's a little bit of a problem here, but I really have to do a clinical exam. Would you mind if I spend a few minutes doing that? And then we'll have you come back for the full examination later. So I'd go in there and for a couple of minutes, I'd look around and be very gentle and nice to the person. And I would say, okay, now we'll have you come back for the full exam. Remember, there's no charge today. Almost invariably, they really respected that I treated them with dignity, concern, and they almost always would say, no, go ahead and complete the exam. And they would go up to the front desk and schedule their surgery or whatever treatment they needed. And they left a happy camper. And our relationship was wonderful for the rest of the time. So, those kind of situations you can do with an attorney and a client.
And you gave them honest, helpful advice that tried to relieve their concerns and anxiety.
Right. And I wasn't doing it for money because I said to them, I'll, give it away free. But, they knew in the long run they were going to pay for treatment, which they did. So it was really a win-win situation.
And you put them in a positive framework. So they were less argumentative, less difficult in terms of negotiating skills, and you didn't really have to sell them, a service because you bonded with them and they wanted to come
Absolutely.
back. I just want to remind our listeners we're talking with John Scottosante, and he's talking about negotiation skills and ways to improve the bond between attorneys and clients as well in a non-stressful, non-forceful way. You're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Knox Community College in Garden City, Long Island, New York. What are some other ideas in terms of negotiation? If a lawyer has to negotiate something with a client or with another attorney, what any do's and don'ts that you want to suggest to them?
Well, one of the things you definitely want to do is leave your ego outside the room, because your ego, if you come in there with your ego in full force, you're going to ruin that relationship, and you're also going to make the hairs on the back of the neck of the other individual stand up and really set their mindset on what they want only. So definitely leaving the ego out of it is so important. And you don't ever want to go into a negotiation and then get angry during the negotiation. I mean, that's a terrible way to try to get what you want and settle and negotiate. And don't go straight into business. Try to have a social time, a few minutes, find some connection. I had an interesting situation just recently. I'm a part owner in an office building and have been for many years, and a third owner, and we're getting older and we need to bring in a young partner. And so we had a meeting, the three guys, three owners, and we decided what the price would be to buy in. But I disagreed with the other two. They wanted to give a lower price. Well, interestingly enough, I was planning on going to the meeting where we're going to finalize everything. And I was going to hold my ground and just say, no, this is ridiculous. This price is too low. And as I walked into the room, the first thing the other person said, the person we were bringing into the organization, first thing he said to me is, hey, John, I went on Amazon, I bought your book and I read it and I really loved it. And in fact, I bought a copy for one of my friends. I'll tell you, my attitude towards this guy changed totally. Not that I was giving away the farm, but I began realizing that he was going to be the managing partner and he was going to have to deal with all the tenants. And he actually had an office in the building, so it made sense that he would be there, but he would manage the building, take care of all the problems. And that was worth a lot.
And you also realized his approach, that he researched and he tried to start the discussions on a positive note and to,
Yeah,
let's say, butter
absolutely.
you up.
No, he definitely did.
But
You know,
but those are all good approaches to start out. Don't say it's my way or the highway. Be firm on some issues. Maybe
yeah,
explain why you're pretty firm about them. Pretty firm. And, explain where you're flexible and, try to find out ways to accommodate the other person a little bit so they feel that they're accomplishing something for their goals or their clients.
that is so important. So other things you want to do is, again, I said earlier about listening. You just have to listen to try to see a little bit of their side of the story. You may not know the whole picture. The other thing that's important is don't get yourself caught in telling lies, because if those come out and you lose your integrity, you may have a real problem. And you need to be clear what your needs are and set the rules as far as what you're willing to, negotiate to.
And tell us about your book, Moral Adhesions, and some of
Yeah,
the
yeah, let me tell you
things you
about that.
cover in that book and how it's helpful to lawyers as well.
Well, if you're having any issues in your life in which you're not very happy or you're having problems, let's say anxiety, let's just say that you're stressed, you're doing too much, you've committed yourself financially, and you're not happy. That's not going to work well in negotiations that day or anytime in the future. So I went through this unhappiness period when I was really stressed. And I began looking at actually, I looked at what some people call the seven deadly sins, but you can call them whatever you want. And the first one is pride and ego. And I'll tell you, I always wanted to be right, no matter who I dealt with, especially even at home. I found out that I wasn't getting too far at home, always wanting to be right. Somebody said to me, you ought to learn this phrase. Would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? And I always wanted to be right because I thought I knew it all. Another thing that we often do
But it's better to be happy.
well, you certainly would like to have both, right? You'd like to have part of what you want and but be happy and make the other person happy. Because if the other person is not happy, particularly in your family situation, you're not going to be happy.
And with friends, with coworkers, if they're happy, you're going to be probably happier.
Absolutely. Making the people you work with happy and your coworkers and your patients or in your case, your clients, having that relationship is absolutely wonderful. One of the other things you want to be careful of is envy. Is you envy somebody who's got something better than you have, and that distorts your viewpoint of them. It makes it more difficult for you to create that relationship. And another thing you try to avoid is getting angry. And one of the best ways to try to do that is something called, forgiveness. I had a man who was in our office for a while, and he was going to become a partner. He acted like he was going to become a partner, and he helped us design a new, larger office. And at the very last moment, he pulled out of the deal and negotiated with our previous owner of the place we were renting to take over that property after we moved out. And it was a terrible situation. And for many years, I would speak to the guy and I was really angry. It was part of my situation. And I finally forgave him. I started sleeping better. It's hard to hold a lot of grudges in your life. And so it's a good idea to start looking at all those situations. And some of those people might even be dead, but you can still forgive them. You don't know what goes on in a person's life.
And did you say that to them, or you just in your own mind you forgave them?
Yeah. Well, in this particular instance, I just started becoming friendly to them. Turns out we both joined the same golf club and we got stuck in the same foursome. And I started seeing the good side of them in many
And it
ways.
takes a lot more energy to hate someone, and it squanders energy too.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. And then now some of these other things, greed, wanting too much, wanting the whole thing. I mean, obviously, that's a big part of negotiation. And gluttony. I mean, gluttony, we could talk about addictions to alcohol, drugs. If you're suffering from any of those things whatsoever, if you haven't dealt with them, it's really hard to negotiate at the highest levels. There was something called Maslow's pyramid of success. There's five different levels, and he talks about the basic needs of people at the bottom level where they need to have, comfort and warmth and food and et cetera, and all the way up to the top where they need a job, and then they eventually gather friends. But ultimately, they want to become what he calls self-actualized. They want to operate from a level of honesty, honor, and goodness. And it's the highest level. And working towards that is really important.
And
So my book talks about my journey doing that.
and with messages for others. But
Yes.
going back to the negotiation skills, if someone looks for trying to leave the other person in a better place, to give a little, to maybe get a little, that goes back to a win-win situation in negotiations. You
Yes.
don't want to push their back to the wall. You want to get what you need and give them something that helps them as well, so it can be a win-win situation.
And you talked a little bit about concessions, and you even raised the point, do you have to always give up something to get a concession? In other words, is it a trade-off type of thing? Not necessarily. Just showing respect to the other party, in a sense, can often act like you're giving a concession.
Yes, making it a conversation and a fruitful negotiation can help them to feel better about it.
Hmm.
So I just want to remind our listeners that we're talking with John Scottosante. That's Scottosante, and he's the author of the book Mortal Adhesions. And we're talking about negotiation skills and also bringing yourself and perhaps everyone involved in a business discussion or litigation to a better place. Do you have any other, and you're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, Long Island, New York. If you missed any part of this conversation or you want to tell someone else about it, the podcast is available at nccradio.org. Are there other ways to try to distress the lawyer and client relationship?
Well, you have to both be on the same team. So I think it's important that you and the lawyer initially sit down and you tell the lawyer what your needs are. What do you want? What's your bottom line? What is your uh, ability to negotiate and how much? But again, it's that love-fear relationship. If you're not getting along with your lawyer, I think the first thing you try to do is diffuse it in some way or another and be totally honest and see them as potentially angry. Bring it up. What's upsetting you? I think honesty is one of the most important things that we can do.
And a
You know,
lawyer, as you mentioned, having that limited free consultation with the client, it's important for lawyers to think about doing that or not worry about billing for every little phone call or every little conversation,
yeah.
just attributing some of it to goodwill and building that lawyer-client relationship.
I remember something, Ken, if we have time, I'd like to
Sure.
bring it, having to do with a lawyer. Okay, we were going through that partnership agreement that I was telling you about when the guy walked out on us. And we had spent a fortune, a lot of money, with our attorney. But my partner was dealing with that attorney on a private issue. I think it was a issue with a pending divorce. And walking out to the parking lot, he got a hold of the lawyer as he was entering in his car and said, "I want to ask you about my divorce case." He didn't spend more than about 2 minutes. At least that's what I heard about the divorce case. And he ended up getting two bills, one for the main negotiation, which we fully expected for, but he got another substantial bill for the 5-minute consultation in the parking lot. My partner was so mad, he wanted us to sever the relationship with the attorney. How do you feel about that?
No, I don't think it's a good idea. I think those relationships are hard to establish. It can lead to other clients. It's penny wise and pound foolish, or vice versa, to bill for every second, especially if you're an ongoing client.
No, I agree.
Any final thoughts that you have in terms of
for
negotiation skills? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, again, to negotiate, you have to feel good about yourself. And if anybody listening is going through any stress or anything in their life, and they want to see what I did to de-stress, you can go to my website, mortaladhesions.com, and that will tell you more about the book. It'll tell you how to get it through Amazon or any of the other book dealers. But that's important. You've got to have good relationships with your attorney. You have to have good relationships with the people that you work with and you live with. And I think that's just so important.
And other professionals out there, lawyers, doctors, plumbers, auto mechanics, if they give that little free consultation, maybe do a quick job and don't charge a fortune, they're going to be building a relationship with that customer, which can lead to good PR, especially as we have such on the internet these days. And in the end, it's going to lead to a win-win situation for that vendor.
I agree totally. Yeah, give a little bit away. It's worth so much. Show that you care about the person. That's the critical thing. That's what turned that man around in my office. They care more about that you care about them than how much you know about your profession sometimes.
And you're helping them. And obviously maybe you're worried about a problem, and maybe you, other professional, it's a little thing, or you can give them information, or you need a little information so you can opine about it. But just do that. Don't be stuck on a fee or a retainer or making a client out of them. You just want to do the right thing in that moment, and hopefully it will lead to a win-win situation for both of you down the road.
I agree.
Okay, I'd just like to remind our listeners you're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC. If you missed any portion of the program, you want to tell someone else about it, just go to nccradio.org. And please join us this same time next week right here at 90.3 WHPC or on nccradio.org for another program on Law You Should Know.